Hey, everybody, we are live. I'm Jeff with eBay Addicts, and today I got a brand new guest for you guys. His name is Brian. You may have heard of him before. His YouTube channel is called Doctor Denim. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jeff. How you doing?
Awesome, awesome, man. I'm excited to have you here on the channel today. So, real quick, just in case somebody in our audience doesn't know who you are, you can go ahead and kind of introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are, where you're from, what state you live in, and tell them a little bit about what it is that you do.
Yeah, sure. My name is Brian. My YouTube channel is Doctor Denim. I am a full-time reseller on eBay, a couple other platforms, but mostly eBay. I primarily sell pre-owned clothing and shoes. Prior to being a full-time reseller, which I've been for about a year, maybe a little bit over a year, I was a full-time teacher, and then if you go back even further, I was a police officer. So yeah, that's it. Like right now, I sell, obviously I sell a lot of jeans, hence the screen the the YouTube name Doctor Denim.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so Brian is a full-time reseller, and he has over 6,000 items active listed on his eBay store. And believe it or not, like when you go into the eBay thing on the algorithm, it'll show you where you're ranked, and he's ranked in the top 100 as far as blue jeans go, right? And certain in that particular niche in that category that you sell in. But before we get into reselling, since we have you here on the live stream, and this is the first time we've had you on, I have a segment where I kind of talk a little bit more about your backstory of how you got started into reselling. So if you don't mind talking about that for a second, because I think it's kind of cool that you went from being a police officer to a school teacher, and then you're just like, oh, you know what? I think I'll be a full time reseller. So kind of walk me through, were you kind of reselling part time on the side before you became a full time reseller, and what kind of led you to do this? What kind of led your career path? Because I always thought it would be cool to be a police officer, and then sometimes I'm on my way home from work. It's pouring down rain. There's a wreck, and the whole highway is shut down. And I'm like, man, I'm so glad that I get to go home and take a shower and sleep in my nice warm bed, and I'm not out here in the middle of the directed traffic or something. So tell me about your experience. Do you have any crazy stories you could tell us about?
Sure. Okay. Well, going back to college, like I've always enjoyed books, and so I was a lit major, and my senior year, right before I graduated, like a good friend of mine tested and he became a police officer, and that sounded interesting to me because I've always kind of like had these ideals of looking out for the little guys, right and wrong, the things of that nature. So I applied. I was hired. I went through the Dallas County Sheriff's Academy, class 113. Still remember that. Was a full-time police officer for a couple years, and it's weird because I did really enjoy it. No 2 days are the same. Um, I mostly worked, like when you go through training, you work all the shifts. You get different FTOs or field training officers, and once I was got through the academy, got through my training, I was working the overnight shift 6P to 6A, basically 3 days on, 2 days off, two on, three off. And you see a lot of really interesting things, and you do get to help a lot of interesting people. You know, I, kind of like what you're imagining. High speed chases. You just see a lot of interesting things. So that was fun. But I also am married. I have a wife and four kids, so that was tough. Me sleeping and my kids were little at the time while they're at school or they're at home and vice versa was just tough.
Yeah.
So after about 2 years, I decided to and here's the other thing, like dealing with kids and people in general. I always felt bad. Like I remember arresting like a 13-year-old girl um, over, like a like she was allegedly going to stab her dad over the dinner table, and then hearing the backstory and just felt terrible. And I guess I was more idealistic back then, and I was
Yeah.
thinking like I'd like to reach these kids before, but before they get in these situations. So I applied to be a teacher, got hired for that. I did stay on as a reserve police officer, which is basically kind of like being a part-time officer, I'd still come in and do shifts, but I would only work 2, 3, 4 shifts a month on average. So I still got to, do all the fun stuff you were talking about.
Yeah.
And it's not fun, directing traffic in the pouring rain when it's freezing either, by the way. But I was also able to teach and coach, and I really enjoyed that. But over time, like actually both professions, it's really hard to do either profession, especially right now. Um, and like over time as a teacher, it just became more and more paperwork, and I started doing reselling part time. I really enjoyed that. Found out that you can make
Yeah.
really good money reselling, and in September of last year, with everything going on in teaching, I said, well, now's the time. Let's give it a try, and I switched over to full time reselling, and have enjoyed it since.
Yeah, I hear a lot of the school teachers are overworked and underpaid, and they kind of got your hands cuffed a little bit as far as what you can and can't do and what you can and can't teach in class. And so it's like, I guess after a while you just kind of got burned out of it. And now the cool thing is now you kind of have best of both worlds, because you have an income. You're making between $10,000 to $15,000 a month right now in gross sales as a full time reseller, and you get to spend more time with your wife and your 4 kids. And you can kind of make up your own work schedule. And if you want to take the kids to the zoo or the park or whatever, as long as you get your listings up and you get your shipping done, you can say, hey kids, let's go, let's all go to the park or the zoo or go out to dinner or whatever. You can do that, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. You do have that freedom. Um, and like what we were talking about previously with the draft bank, I think that's where a draft bank comes in. Like create a few more like I have a goal for listings each day, and I try to do a few more on top of that I don't actually list live. I put them in the draft bank. Typically you
Yeah.
can keep those there for up to 30 days. And then like last week with Thanksgiving, I didn't work Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. And or if you want to, like you said, take your kids somewhere during the week, you can do that and still either schedule those listings to go live or take 10, 15 minutes and launch those drafts in the morning. So it allows you to do that.
Yeah, so awesome. So what would be like your 1 or 2 things that you love, that's your favorite thing about reselling, and 1 or 2 things that you dislike about it? So if someone's like, man, I really would like to be a full-time reseller like Dr. Denim, what would be 1 or 2 good things and 1 or 2 things you're like, it's okay, that's not my favorite?
All right. Good things, you're your own boss, right? And that could be a blessing or a curse. If you're consistent and you're disciplined, it's great. And you can make those exceptions if you want to do something. Um, Not being told by anyone what I need to do is great. Like as a teacher, there was definitely more micromanagement and less independence. As a police officer, I actually did have a lot of independence, and I really enjoyed that. So I guess the independence is one of the best things. And maybe number two is you control how much money you make. If you want to make like wherever you're at, like I'm doing about 15,000 a month gross, and that's on about, well, it's currently 28 listings per day. If I wanted to make more, I could just work an extra hour and take it, say, from 28 listings maybe to 34 or 35. And over time, I would give myself a pay raise. Like that 15,000 over time would go up, I don't know, 16, 17, 18,000 over time.
Right.
And you can't do that in a regular job. Like if you're working at Starbucks and you want a $5 an hour raise, I mean, good luck. But
Right. Right.
with reselling, you can do that. I guess on the negative side, it's almost like it's a dual-edged sword. That independence can be crippling, right? Because if you abuse it, if I sleep in, and especially if I do this consistently, and if I just say, hey, I'm gonna sit on the couch during lunch, I'm gonna watch Netflix, and it's okay if I don't get my listings up. That independence without structure can really hurt you, because if you look, most people when you go to a 9 to 5, they provide the structure for you, and it's hard for most people in our society to create the habits. And we talk about this in Tech and Sports Group, Atomic Habits, one of the book studies I led. If you don't create the habits and the systems, then it's easy to fall in those traps. Like I've got friends that struggle being consistent. So it can be a blessing or a
Sure.
curse, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when the positive thing, you get to be your own boss. Negative thing is that if you're not making money and you're slacking off, you got no one to blame but yourself. You can you're nothing but point the finger at the guy in the mirror. So I definitely can relate on that part because it's like if you're not hustling and putting the work in, you may not get the results. So we're live. I wanted to give a shout out real quick to Bluegrass Thrift says, "Hey, I'm anxious to hear more about denim. Lots to know." And I want to give a shout out to the Bargain Effect. Says hello and good afternoon. If you guys have questions for our guests, go ahead and drop it in the chat. I got a brand new guest for you guys today. So, hey, real quick question, man, Brian. I know this is going to sound like an oddball question to you, but did you ever have slow nights when you were a police officer where you were thinking, like, man, tonight is a slow night. Maybe I could sit in this corner here in the parking lot for 2 or 3 hours and crank out some eBay listings? Did you ever have days like that where you could sit there and do that while you're on the clock? Or was it constant, hustling and bustling all the time?
Yeah, well, when I was full time, I hadn't started eBay yet, so that wasn't a factor. Later in my career, when I was a reserve officer, I could do that. But at that point, since I was just doing it as a reserve or kind of part time ish, when I went in, I was actually looking forward to it. I really enjoyed that profession, and sometimes I even wonder. Like I was actually rookie of the year for the department when I came
Yeah.
on board, and that's one of those things that sometimes I'm like, kind of wish maybe I'd have stayed full time. But so no, I mean, yeah, I definitely could have, and if I was full time, say I'd have stayed full time instead of going into teaching. You know, depending on your department and the activity, you definitely have some times like that where you could find a spot to work on paperwork, and you could probably crank out some listings, I'm sure. I know a
Okay.
lot of people now as a teacher during my planning period, I did do that. I'll be honest.
All right, all right. I'm just we won't tell anybody, just between me and you. I'm just curious because I was like, maybe you might have an extra hour or two, extra 30 minutes on your lunch break where you could crank out some listings real quick. So hey, I wanted to give a shout out real quick to Jabela Flips is in the chat. Says hey Jeff and Brian. So hey man, so talk to me a little bit about so you when you got to the point where you're like, okay, I'm ready to you've already been doing reselling part time and you were ready to kind of jump out of the airplane without a parachute, so to speak, and you're like, all right, I made my decision. I'm going to be a full-time reseller now. Did you sit down and talk to your wife about it first, or were you just like, hey, I quit my job. I'm going to be a full-time reseller? Like, what was there planning or strategy behind it, or were you just like, all right, that's it, I've had it, I'm out of here?
Yeah, that was interesting. I guess going back to August of last year, early September, a reselling friend of mine, and you'll see him sometime on our lives, Clay's Closet is this channel, even though he doesn't do much reselling content. At the time, like I had been teaching him, like mentoring him with reselling, and he jumped. Like in my mind, I was like, all right, maybe let's go one more year. I was kind of at the point where it was year to year. But when I saw him jump, I was like, wait a second, how can he jump? Like he's not making nearly the sales I'm making. So then I started to think about it seriously.
Right.
Um, and I can be really convincing when I want to be. Like I had the numbers, like I could show myself. Like at the time, they weren't what they are now. Like I think on eBay, I was doing like 5,000 a month, which still isn't bad. And then a little bit on Poshmark and some other channels at the on some other platforms. So maybe like 7,000 a month, which was gross. So close to what I was making teaching. And I also knew, well, I'd learned a lot because I'd done a lot of different models and had tried a lot of different things, and they'd all been successful with reselling. And so I knew if I put more time into it, if I jumped full in, that I can make it happen. So I was able to convince the wife, and she was a little skeptical, but if you burn your boats, you burn your bridges, and you have people depending on you, it's either you're going to fail. And I also knew I could always go back to teaching. I still have my teacher certificate. Like I knew that was a backup, but I didn't want to go back to working for anyone else. I remember it was September 16th of last year when I went full time. I remember driving to the post office. It was a cool day. I rolled my windows down. I was just like jamming out in the car, like just feeling this freedom. And since then, I've realized it's a lot of work, but but I control it. So yeah, my wife was a little skeptical, but I was able to convince her.
So you're ready to sink or swim, and were you tempted at even a little bit, like, hey, maybe I'll go back and be like a substitute teacher, like 2 or 3 days a week, just to make some extra money? Were you tempted to maybe go back and do it part time, or were you just like, you know what, I'm just gonna jump, burn the boats, do this, jump in the boat, and become a full time reseller, and then figure it out on the way down? You know, kind of like open up the parachute on the way down, kind of deal, right?
Well, yeah, I was aware there were opportunities because I have friends, like I've been teaching for a while, and I was in Dallas ISD, and I was part of the distinguished teacher program. So, I mean, not like tooting my horn or anything, like where they basically pay you allegedly based on performance, which that's a whole nother podcast. But I ranked high, and um, I had teacher friends in other districts
Yeah,
that basically said, hey, if you want to come here, we have a job for you. And I knew I could always go back and sell. But when I looked at what I can make selling on eBay versus subbing, it's like a no-brainer. Like I can pick up one pair of used shoes, a pair of fried boots, and make as much by selling those as I would substitute teaching in a full day. So seeing that potential, like I was aware of that, but I don't think I was ever tempted. Just I would say more aware of that as
yeah.
a possibility.
All right, cool. I want to give a quick shout out here to the Flippin' Sports guy is in the chat, and I want to give a shout out to Alex is here. So, hey, if you guys have questions for our guest, drop it in the chat. So, Brian, while we got you here, being our first time guest, you know, I got to pick your brain on this. Most people come here, we want to learn and pick your brain a little bit about reselling. So, how did you go from growing your eBay store from 0 items to 6,000 plus items in your eBay store? You know, I read a statistic recently that says the average seller on eBay has like little over 250 items in their eBay store. And for you to have 6,000 items, you're kind of in a rare breed of reseller. You know, it's most people I think are kind of doing it maybe as a hobby, but this is your full time gig. And Brian recently dropped a video in the past week talking about how he went from, you know, where he was averaging 5,000 a month, and he's increased it to like $15,000 a month in gross sales. So if you take $15,000 a month divided by 30 days, that means he's averaging about $500 a day on average in gross sales on eBay, and he's mainly doing it selling denims, used clothing, and shoes. So that's not really my niche of expertise. So I want to kind of dive into it and pick your brain a little bit. So tell people your strategy of how you went from 0 to 6,000 items listed, and tell them your strategy kind of how you went from growing your sales from 5,000 to 15,000.
Sure. When I went full time, I had under 1,000 items in my store, and I was an everything seller. So I had hard goods. I did like to sell shoes. I'd experimented with retail arbitrage. Like I used to have a Nike clearance outlet near me, and I would go and load up the vehicle with new Nikes, and make 15, 20, sometimes more flipping those. And then I got into pre-owned shoes as well, and there's good money there. But I was doing auctions, I was doing storage units, I was kind of doing everything. Like I was consuming so much content on YouTube, following so many people: Craigslist Hunter, Bonafide Hustler, Daily Refinement. And I think Daily Refinement for me is the key. Chris in his group, he has a paid group, and generally I'm not a fan of paid groups. Um, but I joined his. I figure if I'm going to be full time, like they have a morning call at 8 a.m. Central Time, and we all check in and talk about like processes to improve ourselves as resellers. I really like that mindset. And at that same time, Chris kind of got involved with Tech and Sports, and Tech and Sports does like $7,000 to $8,000 a day gross selling pre-owned clothing. And in the group, he has calls on Tuesday. There's like lots of calls. Like I actually lead, like I mentioned before, the book club, a book club call, and Chris has a morning call. There's jewelry calls. There's a media call. You're like what you do. There's women's clothing. There's so many little niches, and basically, I saw what Tech and Sports was doing, and he's doing it on a bigger scale. Like he has, I think, 3, maybe 4 employees, and each of them crank out about 100 listings per day. So he's cranking out 250 to 300 listings per day. And over time, he just explained the process, and I saw the scalability of it. and I jumped in, and there for a while I was doing 50 listings a day. I hired a virtual assistant, which there's a lot there. There's pros and cons to that. It did really allow me to grow my store quickly. At the time, I was not a true expert in clothing. And so if you're not an expert in something, you can't really train somebody because you don't know. Just like as going back to teaching, if you don't know the content, then how am I going to teach my students how to write or how to read or
Right.
annotate or any of that? So in the group, we talked, and I got rid of my VA, and I've taken on the listing and everything. And my plan is to keep growing it slowly over time until I'm maxed out. And at that point, hire out to scale. And just depends on where I want to go. But I guess to answer your question, being in a group where you see people doing that on a very high level and you see what's possible, and they kind of give you the coaching and the
Encouragement. Yeah.
motivation
Yeah.
and encouragement, and just on a much smaller level, but just like I was talking to Tech yesterday, like I'm up 182%, I think, year over year. I ran that report yesterday, and
Yeah.
I don't think by myself I would have got there. So I give a lot of it to daily refinement in tech and sports.
Yeah, I believe that if you're surrounded by positive, like-minded people, that's going to definitely help push you in the right direction. But I don't know if you know, familiar with my channel, but I kind of put my guests on the spot a little bit. So Brian, you got to give us like your top 3 tips or pieces of advice to help someone grow their eBay store or to help someone make a full-time income on eBay. So maybe they're at the point where they're like, man, I would love to be a full-time reseller, or maybe they're like, hey, I want to keep my full-time job, but I want to make a full-time income on eBay. I would like to get to the point where Brian's at, where he's doing, consistently $10,000 to $15,000 a month gross sales on eBay. What would be like your top 3 tips or piece of advice to help out another reseller if they're watching you now, because you've got 5 years of experience and this is your full-time gig?
Sure. Well, number one, like what we were talking about, put yourself in a group or surround yourself with people that are positive and can help mentor you. The quote, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If a lot of Facebook groups out there for resellers are really negative, and a lot of people are finding reasons they can't. Find a group of people that are doing it and that support you and that will help grow you. So that would be one thing. Number 2, for me, it was narrowing down what I was reselling. Don't get me wrong, I love it, and I still will go to garage sales and buy a storage unit every once in a while, and like on a Saturday I'll list that stuff because it's fun and you could hit some home runs. But to run a business on eBay, it's better to niche down. Sell everything, and then figure out the things you like. If it's media, if it's clothing, if it's jewelry, if it's antiques, whatever it is, figure that out and then narrow that down where you become more efficient. Because if you're just listing, like for me, I'm listing the same things most of the time. So I've got my setup, my listing booth set up. I can sell similar off my listings. It's just more efficient, which allows me to get more listings up. When I was selling everything, it's hard to go from listing and testing a VCR to pair of glassware to a DVD. Like that's hard to do all that, and you can't be very efficient. So that'd be my number 2 is narrow down or niche down so you can be more efficient. And then number 3, which we've already kind of mentioned, is just be consistent. Like over time, consistency in everything you do. I mean, this can go into your personal life too, right? Whatever it is you do, develop those habits, become consistent, and over time, the results will yield more than you could imagine. And that's actually why I've decided to get back into YouTube. Is I'm thinking that same mindset. Like if you're, and I'm sure Jeff, because you've been, like you said, you've been doing this. Like over time, that consistency yields results. So whatever area of your life you want to excel in, just be consistent and don't give up.
Yeah, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's like that guy that's like, hey, I want to lose 100 pounds. And he goes on the treadmill for 30 minutes and it's like, this doesn't work. And it's like, no, dude, you got to eat healthy food and consistently go to the gym 3-4 days a week. as like a lifestyle. So it's almost the same thing with reselling. It's getting to say, well, I listed one day once a month for 30 minutes or an hour and say, oh, this doesn't work. Like you have to kind of do it consistently over a period of time. And then, the results may not happen overnight. But for you, Brian, I wanted to point out that, when you were an everything seller and was kind of just selling anything you could get your hands on, you were hovering right around $5,000 a month in gross sales. And when you kind of niche down and got to kind of laser focus and says, hey, I want to specialize in used clothing, denim, selling used shoes, then, you became kind of an expert in your niche. And now you're hovering around $15,000 a month. And that was probably one of the things that kind of helped propelled and grow your business, because you weren't just like having the shiny object syndrome where you walk into a thrift store or a yard sale and you're just like grabbing anything and everything. Because when you become a master or become a expert in that category, you already know the sell-through rate of a particular style of blue jeans or shoes. You already know, like, because you sold that item over and over and over again. Like I was at a pawn shop last week and they had this DVD for 50 cents. So I didn't have to look it up. I just knew in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, I've sold that DVD for 30 bucks. And guess what? I picked it up for 50 cents. Within 2 days later, it sold for full asking price, $30. Just because you're in that niche and you're in that market and you see the same items over and over and over again, you don't even have to stop and scan and look up sold comps, because you've done it over and over and over again. So let me say hello to a few people here in the chat that I missed. I wanted to say hey to the Flippin' Sports Guy. The Flippin' Hustler is here. Hey, I subscribed to your channel, Flippin' Hustler. Thanks for coming by and hanging out with us today. I wanted to say hey to Knucklehead Hustle is here. Angie Resells is here. I hope you're doing better. I caught your video today, Angie Resells. I wanted to say hey to Bluegrass Thrift, Flippin' Sports Guy. I wanted to give a shout out to Sal is here in the chat. And we have a couple questions here in the chat. Knucklehead Hustle said, hey, Brian, when you started to niche down, how did you get through your backlog of random items?
Well, I never kept a giant death pile to begin with. Like it would probably never be more than a week or 2 weeks max. So it was pretty easy to transition. And, and even now, like if I go hit garage sales and I'm focused in on clothing, I'm still scanning because I have the experience. I'm still scanning as I'm walking by. Like I found a Sony Walkman, new in package for $3 at a garage sale a couple weeks. I mean, I would be kind of stupid not to pick that up because that's quick and easy to list. So I will still pick those up. And then on a Saturday, I will spend, depending on how much inventory I have, a few hours listing the hard goods. But during the week, I make sure that clothing is my priority. So I never really had a big backstock of items when I made the switch. Maybe that first couple of weeks, I split up my day half and half. Maybe in the morning, after I shipped, I would do hard goods, eat lunch, then after lunch, switch to listing clothing until I quit for the day.
Okay, I wanted to give a shout out here to Maggie Doodle is in the chat. The bargain effect is here. And Angie is asking a question. I was about to ask you the same thing. She says, where are you sourcing most of your items from? So for you to consistently list 30 plus items a day, you have to have a consistent source of inventory coming in. So are you buying stuff in bulk? Are you hitting up yard sales, thrift stores? Do you have a route that you hit every day? Like what's your plan of action for as far as you sourcing to get merchandise? Go ahead.
Well, once you narrow down your focus, it becomes easier. Like people begin to know that you're the jean guy, or you're the clothes guy, or you're the shoes guy. And I've done all of those at different times. And like currently, I have someone who sources for me. I pay him per piece. He goes thrifting, garage selling to the bins. Sometimes I will go out to a thrift store. Like tomorrow morning, I'll probably spend a couple hours going garage selling just for a little variety, to be honest. Like I have plenty of inventory to list. I've bought, and a lot of it is being in these groups, like in Daily Refinements group. Matt, the Junkyard Dog, is in the group, and I struck up a relationship with him. And he was sending me pallets of women's jeans. I've done that with him. I sometimes I'll buy a storage unit, and now the difference is I'm looking for storage units. Looks like there might be a lot of shoes or a lot of clothes in, because some of those storage units you can get cheap. They're a lot of work and cleaning, but you can hit some grand slams. Like I bought a storage unit January of 2020, and I wasn't just doing clothes and shoes at the time. I was an everything seller at the time. But when I looked at that storage unit on the last picture on the auction, it looked like there were some Nike boxes, and the pictures were really horrible. And I had taken Wade's venture. He's a big storage unit guy. I'd taken his course. As a matter of fact, I was his first student, and that might be another thing, is like continue to educate yourself on reselling or whatever it is you want to be good at. And so I bought that unit for $100, and it turned out to be loaded with new dead stock of Nike. So I probably made about $10,000 off that unit. So I would say just be aware of all the opportunities that you have, and try to find. Oh, also flea markets. Like I have a vendor at a local flea market, and he goes to rag houses. And that would be a great way to get, if you could go directly to a rag house. But he goes to rag houses and he brings his inventory out there, and like he charges I think $5 for jeans and like $4 for shirts. But because when I went a couple times, and he had good stuff, a lot of vintage jeans, a lot of pearl snap shirts. So
Yeah.
I bought 300 pieces a couple of weeks in a row. And the next thing you know, he makes me a deal. So you could also develop those business relationships, because I'm helping him, because when I go shopping with him, he's making a lot of money that week. So there's just so many ways to do it.
So yeah, the most important thing is to get it at a good price. Back in the day, I used to sell a lot of blue jeans, and specifically a top brand to look for is Levi's blue jeans. And the ones with the red tag would sell like hotcakes. But I used to go to the thrift stores and pick them up for, no joke, $2-3 a piece. And then some of the thrift stores, I guess they caught on, and then they started to gradually start raising their prices. So it got to the point where there was no way I could spend $5-6 for a pair of blue jeans to hope to sell them for $20-25. And by the time you took out your fees and add shipping and all that, there just wasn't enough margin there for me to make a profit. But if you buy stuff in bulk and you're getting whole pallets of stuff shipped to your house, I'm sure you're getting them for a good price. So I got a double question for you. One is, what kind of profit margins are you looking for? So let's say, hypothetically, I don't know what you sell an average pair of jeans for, but let's say it's right around that profit margin of $20-25. What kind of profit margins are you looking for? And can you give us some bolos as far as name brands, jeans or clothing that we need to be on the lookout for that are hot selling items, so we can provide some service to our audience today?
Sure. Like my ASP, and I look at these metrics, all this data eBay gives you. Like my ASP is around $26 with shipping. So, and my average cost of goods is probably about $3. It varies. Like if I go garage selling, it's less. If I'm buying from my flea market guy, it's a little bit more. But just say on average, I'm buying it for $3, and with shipping, like maybe the item costs $20. And average shipping is $6, because it's a combination of jeans, which I can put in a flat rate priority flat rate envelope at $7.91. But if it's first class, it's going for probably $4.50 if it's like a pearl snap shirt. So 3 into 20 is typically what I do. I sell a lot of. I used to be like a bolo hunter, but like Tech and Sports, he sells 30 items, 30 brands that most people don't even pick up. They're bread and butter items, but they're items that people want. Like you mentioned, Levi's, Levi's 501, 550, 560, silver tabs. Those are all highly sought after, but pretty much any Levi's, if I can get it for $3 or under, I'm picking up. I mean, because even if I'm selling a pair of women's, like a pair of women's 711 jeans or perfectly slimming jeans, and they sell for $12 or $15, that's not a lot of profit. But if it only takes you, if you can get it to where you're listing it in 5 or 6 minutes, and you're listing a lot of items, then you got to start thinking about it and how much profit you can generate per hour. So if you start doing the volume game, then you can play in the bread and butter market. Like if you look at my what sold videos that I've started doing, you'll see there's not a whole lot of major big time sales. It's a lot of, $15, $20, $25 items. But if you can do that if you can do that consistently, you're gonna make a lot of money. Like if you think about the retailers that make the most money, it's Walmart,
Yeah.
it's Amazon, and they're not selling Gucci, they're not selling Louis Vuitton, they're
Yeah,
selling
guys.
bread and butter.
If you notice, like I would go to the Dollar Tree, the dollar store, and even though they're only selling items for $1, there's literally a line out to the door. Like if you want to go in and buy a couple things, you may be in there for 20, 30 minutes waiting in line to check out. So, yeah, man, as long as you, are selling a high velocity of items. I was just talking about this yesterday with Cincinnati Picker. He was saying how his average sell price was $56 on eBay, and mine's probably around 20 something dollars. And I was just saying, like, for example, if I picked up this, CD for 50 cents and sold it for $20, it was this Christmas CD and I'm shipping it media mail, the buyer's paying shipping. And if you can do that consistently and you're selling 10, 15, 20 of those a day, where your cost of goods is here, but your profit margin's there, you're looking at, a 40x rate of return on your initial investment. You can't lose money on that deal, So, so for sure, let me say, hello real quick to my buddy Richie Hustles, man. Hey, man, I haven't talked to you in a while, so if I don't get a chance to talk to you again, man, I hope you have a great Christmas. If you guys get a chance, if you're not following Richie Hustles, you should go by and check him out. I wanted to give a quick shout out here to my buddy Philly Picker is in the chat. He says, "What's up, Jeff and Brian?" Javela Flips Annie is here. Candy is here in the chat. The Bargain Effect is here, and Maggie Doodle. I sometimes I skip over your guys' questions. I don't do it on purpose. But we had a question from Bluegrass Thrift, says, "What is your white whale that you were looking for?" And Candy wanted to know, what is a rag house?
All right, we'll start with the last one. It's a rag house. All right, when you think about clothing, and Jeff, you mentioned this, like it's harder and harder to get deals at thrift stores, at regular thrift stores. You have to go on sales days, or you have to really know your niche and be able to find things that they're missing, which is possible. But then you have like your outlet bins, your Goodwill outlet. That's where Goodwill is sending unsold merchandise. Sometimes they're sending items that haven't even hit their stores. It depends. It varies by region. Like in Florida, they send it straight to the Goodwill bins in certain areas if it's not things that they want to put up. And if it slips through the crack at the bins, then it's going to go down to a rag house. And a rag house are giant like warehouses, typically on ports. They're going to be on the coast, like Houston's going to have one. Miami, like your port cities are typically where you're going to find a rag house. And these rag houses are like the last stop before this stuff gets bulked up and gets sent overseas. Where it's getting exported to other countries for pennies on the dollar. And if you can get into one of those, there's some amazing items you can find, and they're super cheap. That's where you can find a lot of vintage t-shirts, just a lot of everything. And they're hard to get into, and they're kind of heavily, the people that have access there, they don't want new people, and they're not like really advertised. So it's almost like word of mouth, or you gotta go snooping around to try to get your way into one.
Okay, cool. And other question, if you guys are coming in late or have a first time guest with me today, his name is Brian, Doctor Denim, and right now he's doing about $15,000 a month gross, mainly selling used clothing and shoes. So we're here to pick his brain. If you guys have questions, go ahead and drop it in the chat. We had a question from Bluegrass Thrift, says, "What is your white whales that you were looking for? Is there any elusive item that you've been on the hunt for, that you've been looking at flea markets or yard sales for, that you haven't come across yet?"
Well, that's interesting. Like with my current model, I don't actively search for the white whales. Like I guess just narrowing it down to jeans, like I've spent time educating myself, like what's vintage, what's a biggie, what jeans made in Japan, selvage, like certain things that make jeans more valuable, like learning how to date them based on tags and other things. But I don't specifically go hunting for white whales. If I run across an item like that, then that's just icing on the cake. And I think the more volume you do, the more likely you are to find white whales. So I don't really focus on those. So I can't really answer that per se, other than, I'm always looking out for vintage vintage items, vintage jeans, especially
Yeah.
Levi's. I also sell a lot of pearl snap shirts, Western shirts, and like learning those niches. Like with a Western shirt, like the more gaudy it is, the bolder it is, the more embroidered it is. It's going to be worth more money. So
Yeah.
I don't know if those are necessarily white wells, but just learning more, like learning your niches and what makes something bread and butter. Like you, like with a volume approach, like I'm selling most things for like what I said, for $25, but I'm not going to sell a rare pair of Levi's for that. Like you got to know when to, we're going to talk about that tonight on the
Yeah.
resale
When to
ramp, I
hold
think.
them and when to fold them, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So hey, Brian, I got to switch gears on you real quick. Do you have any big major goals that you have coming up soon, or maybe where you see yourself in the future in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now with your YouTube channel and reselling business?
Yeah, well, the two were linked. I think I want to finish this year. I think I'm on pace to do about 180, maybe 200K gross, and then I will
Wow.
reevaluate going to 2022. I think the goal is to max out what I can do, and I think with me doing shipping and everything, I can probably get up to 50 or 60 listings per day myself. Um, and eventually your sales will catch up to what you're listing. If you're like that top 10 list we were talking about, if you do all those things right, Chris calls
Yeah.
the day reseller nirvana. So once, if you're listing 50 and you're selling 50 a day, you're making a lot of money, then you could afford to hire. So then I would consider hiring either a virtual assistant or somebody in-house. Eventually I'd like to have a warehouse and try to be like a mini tech and sports, or even like a daily refinement, and see if
Yeah.
I can do 1 million gross a year. But I
Well, man,
also
if
know,
you
like,
like you said, you're gonna probably hit 180,000, bro, and you've only been doing this for 5 years. So if you're consistent at what you're doing and you just keep hustling, you're gonna grow. The only thing that I'm concerned about is how much space you have to store everything. And then, of course, as Chris Daily Refinement talks about this all the time. The cost of labor is going to go up, cost of shipping is going to go up, cost of storage is going to go up. So gradually, over time, some of your non-controllables, like if your cost of goods start going up, shipping prices start going up, and all that. But the good thing is, if you look at the chart or the graph over the past 10 years of people that are shopping online, it's going straight up like a hockey stick. So over the next 3, 4, 5 years, uh, theoretically, we should have more and more buyers that are coming to buy more online instead of brick and mortar. So that would be great if you ever got to $1 million in gross sales. I was just curious, like, are you going to get a warehouse? Are you storing the stuff out of your garage or your basement right now, or where are you keeping it right now?
well, currently I'm in my garage. I do have some items here. I also have my listing stations to my left. So I list here, I ship here. I have some items here. I also have 3 storage units. I just got my third one. I've got 10 by 30, a 10 by 20, and I just got another 10 by 30.
Uh huh.
Um, I'm switching up my inventory system here pretty soon to be able to maximize that even more. So I should be good up to about 10,000 items. But eventually, yeah, I think a warehouse would be the goal, but I'm not there yet. Tech and Sports talks about slow grow, and that's kind of my plan. If you could just grow your store 50% year over year, like over time, you're going to be making lots of money, and that's where the
I'm with you.
efficiency and the niching down comes in.
I'm with you, man. Yeah, eventually my goal is I would like to get 50,000 active items listed online. And if you do that, let's say hypothetically every month you list 1,000 items a month, it's not going to take you that long to get there because, I'm not having stuff flying off the shelf immediately as quick as I list it. And so as long as every month you're listing more than you're selling, over time it's going to compound and grow. And where I'm selling in my niche with media items, I can get 50,000 free listings in those select categories for
Mm.
$60 a month, and you don't have to pay no insertion fees. But anyways, the people came here to see you, and so we have a question here from Knucklehead Hustle. He says, "What is your minimum sell-through rate, and do you have a hard cutoff limit?"
Good question. I've kind of dabbled with that over time. I don't think I have a hard sell-through rate. I would probably
Yeah.
say 25% was probably around it. Like for example, I'll pick up men's Wrangler jeans. Now, of course, there's a lot of factors. Like if I'm getting them for $1, $2, $3, I'll pick them up. I wouldn't pick them up above that. Um, so, and the other thing too, that like your sell-through rate is going to be dependent, like we were talking about earlier, on your pricing too. If I price things too high, well, my sell-through rate's going to suffer. But if I price things correctly, and
Yeah.
I'm getting things like what you're talking about at a cheap price and looking to move that inventory. I mean, like I've sold Gloria Vanderbilt, I've sold Chico's jeans, Talbot's jeans, J. Crew,
Yeah.
American Eagle, Levi's, like just a lot of bread and butter that I'm not going to get rich off of any one sell.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm getting it cheap. I'm selling it at a reasonable price, and I'm trying to take the volume approach to
Yeah.
make money. And every once in a while, I'll mix in a nicer sell
Oh,
from something I
it's
stumble across.
Brian, as long as you keep listing items, it's going to happen. One of the fellow content creators that I watch, the Urban Picker, he has about 30,000 active items listed on his eBay store. And I think he said this year he's doing like $30,000 a month right now in gross sales. And a lot of the items he sells is items like you're talking about. He's selling local items that you can get every day in your local neighborhood. But hey, real quick, Brian, I wanted to plug your YouTube channel because you are active on YouTube. So tell people a little bit about your YouTube channel. You do what sold videos on there. Tell them about what kind of content you make on YouTube, and then tell them about your reseller roundtable that you have coming up tonight.
Yeah, sure. Just getting back into YouTube. You can find me at Doctor Denim. I Since I'm kind of doing a volume game, I've been putting out what sold videos pretty much every day, like my 10 best sells of the day, to document for myself, also to help people find some items, what they can sell. I also do some other type of content like eBay tips and tricks, and I've got a lot of ideas for different content. I think I'm going to start doing some garage sale videos, maybe do a storage unit video. Um, I know Daily Refinement told me he would work with me and help me out. So, I just basically, taking my teaching mentality, is I want to, because what reselling's done for me, I want to be able to help other resellers that want to learn, especially beginners, and share some of the knowledge I've gained over the past few years and share it with them, and to help others be able to grow their business, and however they want to. If you want to do it part-time, a hobby, part-time, full-time, the
Right.
sky's the limit, whatever you want to do.
Okay. And so you told them about what time is your reseller
Oh,
roundtable going
yeah,
to be
yeah.
at tonight?
Yeah, thank you. Tonight on my channel, Doctor Denim, we host what we call it the Reseller Roundtable. It's every Thursday at 7 p.m. There's a group of 4 of us on YouTube. It's myself, Doctor Denim. It's Kevin, the Thrifting Lounge, Alton, Addicted to Hustle, and Scott, Dumpster Diver Dad. Oh yes, I'm sorry, I forgot Andy. And we just brought in a new member, Andy, and we all pick a topic that, in a roundtable fashion, we all kind of discuss it. We also have a podcast under the same name, Reseller Roundtable. We're on iTunes, Spotify, and other places. And tonight's topic, we're talking about pricing strategy, the fast nickel versus the slow dime, which is better. So that's what we'll be talking about tonight. So drop by the channel, and we'll be doing it live tonight, and you can jump in the conversation with us.
Yeah, and be sure to pick his brain and ask him questions. So go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you at on YouTube. Are you on Instagram as well? Because I looked you up on Instagram, I couldn't find you. Are you on Instagram right now?
No, I'm just on YouTube. I've just recently jumped back onto YouTube. I'm maybe getting on those other social media platforms later, but right now it's just Dr. Denim on YouTube. That's where you
Yeah.
can find me and find my content currently.
Okay. Okay, cool. If you get time, it won't take but 5 minutes out of your day. You can create a free page on Instagram, and then you can just put a link to your YouTube channel from your Instagram page. So the people that are, following you on Instagram, you could just make a post there once or twice a week, and maybe you could get some new viewers and followers and subscribers from Instagram and kind of bring them over to your YouTube channel. Just a piece of advice. I'm just bringing it up to help you out. So anyways,
Yeah,
I
for
had a good
sure.
time hanging out with you. We've been live for almost 50 minutes. I could probably talk to you for another hour just because I'm an eBay nerd, and we could probably nerd out and talk about eBay for another hour. But go ahead and give us your closing and final thoughts, and then I'll let you go, and hopefully we'll have you back on again sometime.
Yeah. I guess my closing thoughts, I'll just end with consistency, guys. Like whatever size store you want to build, whatever you want to do, and I'm not saying my way is the only way. You could run a smaller store with higher profit items. That's fine as well. Just be consistent, figure out what you want to do, surround yourself with good people, continue to educate yourself, and just be consistent, and you can achieve whatever you want to with reselling or anything really.
Yeah, for sure, guys. If you guys want to go ahead and follow our guests, all the links are going to be down below in the description below. So until next time, I will see you guys next week. I have some brand new guests lined up next week. One of them is going to be Caleb Roth, the book flipper. So if you guys don't know who he is, he created an app. I think he created Scout IQ. I think that's it. I'm not for sure. I have to double check on that. So we have brand new guests lined up for you next week. So till then, you guys have a great weekend, and I will catch you guys next week. And go ahead and follow our guests. All the links are going to be down below. But go ahead and follow him on YouTube. We're going to try to get our guest, Dr. Denim, to 1,000 subscribers. So until then, you guys have a great weekend, and we'll catch you in the next video. Bye, guys.